Let's take a look at the login example. So I'm going to run this program by invoking login. And in the console, I have a prompt asking me for my username. And so the program simply gives me a little welcome message. Let's take a look at the source code that does that. So we can see a few recognizable things in here. We have some print statements, and we have a print statement that involves a variable and a string literal, and we have something here called a scanner object. The scanner object is what allows us to get input from the keyboard. So this basically says take input from the keyboard in cases where we invoke next line. So if I call or invoke next line, it's going to wait for someone to type something on the keyboard and press enter, and then it will initialize this variable with that value. And so it'll use the variable to print out the message. In this example, we're being asked for an integer. And it's using those two integers to do an operation with them and add them together. So we are using, again, we're using a scanner object, and we're using next line, but we're using another method called parseInt in order to convert that into an integer. And when it's in an integer, we can add them together and produce a total. Here's an example that uses decimal numbers. So you give it a bill value, and it calculates the total including tax. And so the only difference is that we're using the parse double method from the double class, and that's because we want to have a double value. So some terminology. The person using our program can choose the value for our variables. That's what we did in the examples, and this is called input. In processing and Java and some other languages, variable names and method names are written in camel case. This means that the first letter is lower and subsequent first letters of words are capitalized. So here's an example. This is not a requirement to get a Java program to run. It's a style issue, and it makes your program easier to read because this is what people are used to. When they see, for example, a word that starts with a capital letter like login screen or kids, automatically, if you're used to reading Java code, you see that as a class name. So this is class name, this is not a class name, and it becomes very clear because the first letter is either capitalized or not capitalized. So it's either a variable or a method name because it starts with a lowercase letter. In this example, I'm going to use keyboard input to control a crab. I'm going to click run, and I'm going to use the arrow keys on the keyboard to rotate and move the crab. And so if we take a look at the crab source code, in the act method of the crab, which we know is being repeatedly invoked while the program's running, it's checking if the left key is down, then we're going to turn to the left a certain amount. If we're pressing the up key, we're going to move forward 5 units.